moment for silent reflection and contemplation. Thank you. I'd like to welcome everybody to the second meeting of the Ad Hoc Committee on Energy Crisis. And in this meeting, we will discuss the way forward for this committee. I would like to table the following apologies that I received. It's Member Bartman, who the alternate members, Member Ferlanda, Member Saleko, Member Maseko, and Member Murray. Presiding Officer, are there any other apologies that we've received?
Good morning, Chairperson. Through you, no other apologies.
Thank you very much. I just want to go through the logistical arrangements for this meeting, seeing as how it's an online meeting. All members to be muted at the beginning of the meeting to avoid background noises. The members can flag points of order in the chat function of MS Teams. All video and audio must be switched off to improve the quality of the connection. However, if a member is speaking, they may put on their mic and video. And please switch off your mics and videos once you have finished speaking. In accordance with the directives for the sittings of the House and meetings of committees that by electronic means, ATC'd on Friday, the 17th of April 2020, Section 8 states that when a member is considered to be out of order by the presiding officer, he or she may mute the microphone of such a member and call such a member to order. And Section 10 speaks to the application of the standing rules in instances where their directives are not clear or do not cover a particular eventuality in respect of the sittings of the House or meetings of the committee by means of video conferencing. The standing rules must apply as far as this is reasonably and practically possible. And in instances where they cannot be applied, the ruling by the presiding officer must be final. Thank you, members, for that. What I want to do is I want to chart or cast the vision that I see the committee going forward. I want to draw your attention to the overview of provincial and revenue and expenditure for 2023 as part of the budget pack that we received a couple of weeks ago, to page 80, 81, and 82, and the top of 83 of the book, which outlines the government's energy plan and the energy resilience program. What I recommend that we do is we focus on two options or two aspects of this energy resilience plan. The two options, the two aspects being operational execution and financial management. The operational execution would be on pages 80, 81, and 82, while the financial management plan will be on page 110 of the OPRI, which details the financial plan for the energy resilience program by department. Sorry, Ms. Klute, if I see a member van der Westhuizen was struggling to find the link, can you please invite him to the meeting?
Today, Chairperson, Member van der Westhuizen is in the meeting.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So back to my vision casting. Page 80, 81, and 82 of the OPRI is the outline for the energy resilience program, which targets the reduced reliance on Eskom, disaster mitigation and management, strategic planning and development, demand side management, generation, procurement, and trading of low carbon energy, and the maintenance of the expansion of required grid infrastructure. Of course, this plan is headed by the Department of the Premier with a budget allocation of 95.9 million on the MTEF. Are there any suggestions or comments on my opening statement? Members Dugmore and Member Christians. Member Dugmore?
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. Greetings, colleagues. I hope you can hear me.
We can, sir.
Chair, I'd just like to try and get an understanding of what's happening in this meeting, because I would have thought that, the Premier himself would be invited to talk through the energy plan. He's also indicated that someone has been appointed, I think a former Eskom employee, to work with the Department of the Premier. But so my question is, why have we not invited them so that they can give a presentation and that we can then engage in that presentation? And in fact, wouldn't it be a good idea as well to invite the newly appointed Minister of Energy at a national level, so that we really, start off at the right footing? I'm just very concerned about what the intention of your introduction was. I'm not quite sure. Thanks.
Thank you, Member Dugmore. Member Christians? I'm going to take the questions and I'll invite them.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And good morning to everybody and members. Chairperson, two things from my side. The very first thing is, I believe this meeting is just to plan ahead and rules of engagement going forward. I think that is the purpose of this meeting. So my suggestion is exactly what Member Dugmore says. I think this meeting must decide who we're going to call to the next meeting. I think we should have a list of names and proposals to see who do we want to engage going forward. I think that's important. And then the other thing that is important is that we also structure. I was part of other ad hoc committee meetings, that we structure the way we are going ahead, questioning and so on. How do we go about with the questioning and those type of things? But I think the purpose of this meeting is really just to get how are we going to plan this the way ahead, with calling in role players, whoever we need to call in. I think we should agree on that in this meeting, who we're going to call in, and set it up according to, which days are we going to meet and how often we're going to meet. I think that is maybe important for me. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Member Christians. Member Nkodlo.
Good morning, Chair of the ad hoc committee and members. Also, let me follow both Member Dugmore and Member Christians, that we do have, I think, the term sheet, or what we have learned from the last ad hoc that we had, with some lessons to learn there, on COVID, which I would have thought that would have utilized to just develop a framework on the basics of how do we drive this work on energy. But I think in terms of oversight, sort of principles and, the approach and how to run things, as Member Christians is saying, I think we do have that, because I think the first thing would have been to really just amongst ourselves agree on our understanding of the task, and that will help us to develop some kind of scope in terms of reference of the things that I think, which includes some of the elements that you gave in your remarks, Chair, of the things that would like to see happening, the kind of stakeholders that would like to sort of call in the initial meetings to understand, what's going to be happening. Because taking note that the issue of this energy crisis and what this provincial government and some of the municipalities have been doing is things that have been happening over the past couple of financial years. So it's to draw from that particular work, and indeed, operationally, how are we going to meet the frequency of our meetings, so that at least we all are on the same page, but also we agree on what are the things as members of this multi-party ad hoc committee, what are the issues out of this energy crisis we would like to oversight, as you have spelled out some of them, so I would have thought that at least the start would need to come from that. And I think that report from the now MEC Wenger, who was chairing our ad hoc committee, would have actually helped us, to start not on a clean slate, but to utilize, the kind of experience that we had in driving any kind of oversight over an issue of this particular magnitude. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Member Nkondlo. Just before I answer, Member Dugmo, is that a legacy hand, or do you have another question?
I'm sorry, Chair, no, it is a legacy hand. I'll take it down right now. Sorry.
Thank you very much. Then first, to answer your question, Member Dugmo, I have the details of Mr. Alvie Lester, and I didn't want to jump the gun, to be honest with you, as to inviting him first without consulting with the committee. I would have hoped that this meeting be a planning just to understand our terms of reference and going forward. I also I have had discussions with the Premier just to see exactly what's the outline of the involvement of the Premier in this committee meeting and how often we want to call the Premier. I also have the details of the Saldanha Bay development zone CEO, and I was hoping that you could also call the Miss I don't know, I can't remember her name now. If you give me just a minute. Ms. Kashifa Bierkus to the committee to find out exactly how they are handling the energy crisis and what are they doing from a mitigation point of view. So I would suggest that we call Mr. Alvie Lester, who is the head of the Energy Resilience Program, as well as, thank you for that, Minister of Electricity. We will call them too. And then we can decide on the regularity of our meetings and what the terms of reference are. Member Dugmo?
Thanks again, Chair. Chair, I think that, I would support Member Nkondlo. Also, if we could just ask our staff members just to share that final report of the previous COVID ad hoc committee. I think, that will also just be useful. Excuse me, but, my sense is that, like with the COVID committee, we face a crisis, which is an energy crisis, which requires all spheres of government, business, labor, community organizations to work together, to try and find solutions. So for me, what's important is we need to actually think about what kind of input do we need, which will both give us a sense of where we are nationally. For instance, I'm aware of a national energy plan. Then we have what's in the Blue Book and in the budget for the province. And there's various municipalities which we hear were initially supported with the Municipal Energy Resilience Project. So for me, I think what we need to do as a committee is to decide what kind of platform of speakers or presenters will sort of almost give us both kind of like a national, provincial and local picture of, because I don't have a sense that there's any tension between the spheres of government. I mean, the Minister of Electricity we saw met with the Premier the other day and so on. But I think, and then we as a committee would want to monitor those interventions, how the money is being expended. But I think also more importantly, as a committee, we would obviously be free, to make recommendations as we go along, to call in, different municipalities, those that are being supported, those that are not necessarily being supported in terms of the energy plan, but, face their own challenges. And then communities. I mean, we really need to call, different community organizations so that and you know,
email is not
ordinary community
updating.
members,
Email is not
ordinary community
updating.
members,
This one
to share with us
is
how
very
this is
slow.
affecting their lives. But I think the starting point for me is to work out what platform of presenters do we need that will really give us an updated picture of the national, provincial, and municipal situation. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Member Christians?
Thank you, Chair. I think, you know, the important thing is I think we should allow members to give names. Who do we think is the stakeholders that we need in the meetings, and then set our meetings. But I think our first point of call should be the Premier, that we have engagement with the Premier, our first meeting. And then importantly, you know, I think we should just send in names to our procedural officer, maybe names that we think of. I don't think we can exhaust names that we have now that we need to engage. We can do that. But I think a lengthy discussion with the Premier is maybe the point where we need to start, and maybe, you know, who he needs to accompany him in that meeting. And then we can plot it. I really want this committee to be an effective committee, effective oversight tool, and, you know, that we get to the nitty gritty. And I mean, the topic is that we have an energy crisis, and that we as the committee are brought, you know, that everybody that's like Member Dagmo said, everybody that's got a role to play, that we get the important role players so that we know where we are and where we're heading. But I think the first point of call should be the Premier and whoever is associated with the Premier, so that we can move from there to the next, and then we can discuss the terms of reference and also the frequency of the meetings from there. But I think the list we should be able to give it to the procedural officer. We don't have all the names here, and then, you know, take it from there and then see, you know, how many people are we seeing, and then we can maybe work out the frequency. But I think it's important matter, it's an urgent matter, and we should, you know, make the most of it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Christians. Before I answer, Member Nkondlo.
Thank you, Chair. I'm covered by the members to say, I think in addition to the colleague or the official you were mentioning, Chair, to be invited, that's dealing with the energy resilience, that the political head where this work will be driven, which is the Premier, I think would be important as the first to just, you know, deal very precisely with the problem statement in context to our problem, because we all know that we've got an energy crisis, but the extent of that crisis in as far as the province is concerned and the solution, yes, we've been debating it as politicians in the House and all of that, but I think it will help us to then start to say, okay, this is what we are dealing with in the province, together with what through the Premier and the budget that you have mentioned, which is almost R1 billion, this is the plan in detail, so that then we know, both from a budgeting point of view, from a programming and other, this is what we are oversighting, including what Member Christian once again is raising about the multi-stakeholder approach, which I think becomes important to get everybody working in realizing and reducing the pressure from all citizens. So I just want to support that first engagement. In my view, I want to support that it's important for us to know what's the lay of the land, but also as part of that, we're given an opportunity to say, which are those stakeholders, what are some of the issues we would like through this committee to get answered? Because part of what I think was good with how we dealt with the COVID is that as members, when we started, we're given an opportunity to say, what are the kind of thematic areas you would like for this ad hoc committee to look at, and then based on those thematic areas, then the chair together with the secretariat is able then, you know, to structure engagements of the different departments and the relevant stakeholders, both in the state and non-state, including those that are in national or a local government. So I think I think it's a matter of emphasis, but also to say from a process point of view, I agree. If we can start with the Premier and the person who's driving energy resilience, and then everything else will then cascade from that, so that at least we've got a structure on how we want to realize our work, and we are pointed, because once we agree up front, what is it that as this committee we are going to be dealing with, it makes it easier in terms of renegotiating if there is any need, but it helps you as the chair together with all of us that at least there's a consensus on the areas of energy crisis oversight that we agree as this committee to sort of deal with, and what will report back to the House.
Thank you so much, Member Nkondlo. Member Kasim.
Thank you, Chairperson. I agree that we need to get on board with regards to the different spheres of government, as we also need to look into the IPPs involved here. We need to understand those municipalities that will also be getting electricity from these IPPs, you know, the independent power producers, or like you said, the Premier's budget as well. And then we also need to understand what the surface level agreement will be with them in terms of continuity and availability, and what is the contracted term for purchasing electricity from these IPPs. If we can also have a focus on that. And then also to add whether electricity costs will be affordable, or rather to determine whether electricity costs will be affordable for the poor and indigent households across the province. There's also an interest on our side as to whether an interest in what is the BBBEE status of these independent power producers that will be involved. And then also to look at the modules on a later stage. Is it a module that looks at the site facility being built by IPPs or service providers and then run by the service provider, and then from there municipalities will buy from them? Or is it going to be built and handed over to municipalities for management? And then lastly, in terms of oversight, wastewater treatment facilities in the province, will it also be included in the oversight because of the high fecal content of tap water, among others? That is all for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Kasim. Member van der Westhuizen.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Chair. Chair, for me, I think this discussion's value is in the sense that we share ideas, our proposals, that we hopefully, get a mutual understanding of what the mandate of this committee should be. So my first proposal would be that we have this kind of discussion, but that we follow this up with perhaps written inputs to you as chair and to the procedural officer as to our thoughts, because time might not allow us to completely, thrash out all the suggestions, so that we perhaps afterwards submit to you, and that you then compile a list of the proposals which we can then discuss at our next meeting. For me, my first point of concern is service delivery in the Western Cape and how that is being affected by the interruptions in electricity supply. And I'm thinking here of schools, I'm thinking here of client desks, etc., where we as a provincial administration interact with the residents of the Western Cape. So I would love to hear from the various departments how load shedding is affecting their work. And if I might just a brief personal note, I was recently at a Home Affairs office. There were queues standing outside on the stoep. You just couldn't believe it. And I was fearing that they might not be able to assist me by 10 o'clock when load shedding was scheduled for that area. And I was much relieved to learn that specific office of Home Affairs has got emergency backup power. So I'm just wondering, to what extent do we have similar provision for backup power already in our provincial administration points of service delivery? And a point that obviously affects many of us, our children, are obviously our schools. To what extent can they have at least their telephone systems, their computer systems, etc., running? But we also do know that audiovisual aids have become an important part of teaching and learning, and I fear perhaps there may be a vast need to be addressed there. But that is my first proposal, that we look at service delivery in the Western Cape. How is it being affected? Not at municipalities first, but our own service delivery points. Then the next one is then our local governments. I believe that, the one thing is to make provision for the load shedding, like we do at our houses, at homes, etc. But the second one is, how are we going to try and manage ourselves out of this crisis? And that is where renewable energy may play a huge role. And then I would think that policies by municipalities might play a huge role in incentivizing people, for example, for rooftop solar, etc. So that would be my second suggestion. Actually, how are we going to manage ourselves out of this crisis and what is the Western Cape's contribution going to be to this national crisis? And then obviously, I think it has already been proposed that we also engage with national, so that we're not out of step with national, but that we actually supplement the national energy plan, so that we absolutely demonstrate our support for all the efforts that are needed to get us out of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Van der Westhuizen. Member Marie.
Thank you so much, Chair. Good morning to all the members. I think we've got to now be very careful. We don't live in a country where there's a direct democracy. There are levels of authority, and there's levels of financing, and there's level of responsibility. And we must first ask ourselves, before we start asking everybody's opinion, where does the buck stop? We have 3 ministers at national level. That's got to do with Eskom. We have Wek Loga representing local authorities throughout the country. And the 30 municipalities are in the Western Cape. They affiliated to Wek Loga. Then we have a Minister of Electricity. We can't bypass them and go and talk to NGOs. We are later on find ourselves where the NGOs will run the country. Okay, we can listen to them, but if you have 20 NGOs, you might have 20 different solutions and views on this matter. So let's first say, where does the buck stop? Who control the financing if we want to do anything? And who has the capacity to carry out whatever plans we might have to solve this problem? Because running to the people now after we've been elected and say, you please tell us what we must do. Nelson Mandela himself told me, he said to me, Peter, sometimes a leader walks in front of his people and he pulls them with him. Sometimes he must walk behind them and push them. But there comes a time when the leader walks next to his people, and then he must be careful what advice he thinks is good advice. So, okay, I am just going to say, if we are going to talk about finding a solution, firstly, what is our mandate? What is our terms of reference? And where does the buck stop, and who should we first see? Notice we have 10 or 20 proposals which the Minister of Energy thinks it's not feasible. He's got his own advisors. We must start there. We must start there and say, what don't you have at the moment, Minister? What would you like us to get you? What type of info do you want from us as a province? Because I'm sure you have a lot of advisors that can advise you differently. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Christians, is that a secondary question?
Yes, it's a secondary question, Chair. Can I proceed?
Yes, you can.
Chair, I of course, we value inputs of all members, but I just want to say from the word go, we've got an energy crisis. Money has been allocated. And the Western Cape Premier has made statements to say, we're going to try to, sort out this problem. We're going to try to be less dependent on Eskom. And there's plans. I mean, I don't want to go into all the plans. So that is my question is, and we can do all the other things. But the important thing is, my suggestion from the start, as a province, we have allocated money. And as a province, the Premier has made statements. The Minister has made statements. I'm talking about the Provincial Minister has made statements. My first point of call is the first meeting, before we do anything else, is to get the Premier here with, I believe, the person, Mr. Albie Lester. Get the Premier here first. Let's work it out. Let's discuss this matter, and then we can do the all subsequent stuff before we get to the other stuff. But the important thing is we're sitting with a crisis, and we want to see, how we can do our oversight effectively. So it's not, the National Energy Minister, that is all there. But I think the crux of the matter is there's money being allocated. Premier has made some statements in his, and the Minister has made statements. Let's concentrate on that first, and then we can work from there. And then, we spoke about terms of reference, we spoke about that, but we know the power that we have. It's oversight over the executive and money being utilized for the energy crisis. So that is our first point of call. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Christian. Just to make sure, members Dagmore and then Van der Westhuizen, are those legacy hands again?
Chair, sorry, no, all I just wanted to add is that I think there was a proposal that we share with you, proposals as to who should constitute like a panel or whatever it is for the first meeting. And we might also then, want to make suggestions after that meeting about a series of topics, whether it is, updated reports in terms of the Western Cape investment, reports from municipalities. I think the issue of the just transition would also, for instance, be an important part. But I think the reality is that we know where the energy function is located. We know also initiatives which have been allowed through amending of regulations in regard to the role of municipalities to generate electricity. I think the key issues of what would the financial impact be if municipalities no longer generate revenue from, for example, selling Eskom power on, and then the issues of the energy mix in our province and so on. So yes, I agree. In a narrow sense, our oversight would be about budgets allocated. But I think there's no way we're going to have a proper engagement and come forward with proposals, unless we have the bigger picture in mind. So that's why I think this initial meeting is very important. And then after that, I'm sure we'd be in a better position to look at further topics and how we're going to work and how often, etc., and when we're going to produce a report. Thanks.
Thank you, Member Dagmore. Member Van der Westhuizen, is that a legacy hand? Member Van der Westhuizen?
Indeed, my apologies. I'm struggling between my devices.
Okay, fantastic. Before I make my comments, Member Pretorius, I see your hand is up. Member Pretorius? Member Pretorius, we can't hear you. I know you're unmuted though. Yes, meetings are open to the public and other interested parties, but not necessarily they can participate in the meetings. Members, what I recommend is that what I'm hearing, is that we call the Premier to outline exactly the plans that he has, as well as Mr. Albie Lester, who's the head of the Energy Resilience Program. So and then the Minister of Electricity, so that we can get the bigger picture as to what the whole of government, and when we call whole of government, we mean national, provincial, and local, so we can get the idea, the understanding as to what the plans are to mitigate the effects of this crisis. I understand that the procedural officer also has the excuse me, the Wenger report available on ad hoc on COVID, so we can use that report as a background. So let's go with the Premier and Mr. Alvi Lester. We move to the National Minister and the rest of it once we get the National Minister involved. Okay, let me just, sorry, I'm just coordinating. Member Dagmo, is that a follow-up question? Because I was not finished with my remarks. Okay. What I also suggest is once we get the Premier in, let's try and get the Premier to appear before this committee as soon as is possible. I will ask the procedural officer to make the necessary arrangements, and then we can go forward from there. Member Kasim, your questions are really important. I was wondering whether you would want us to send the questions to the Premier before so he can address it in that meeting, or would you like to ask the questions in person in that meeting? Member Kasim?
Sorry, I responded to you in the chat box. Yes, you can send it to him. If there are any questions that were not responded to, I can do a follow-up on that day. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So Ms. Klute, if you can arrange that the Premier gets her Member Kasim's questions before. From my side, for those of us who were in the budget meeting for the Department of the Premier, it was recorded, and maybe Member Dagmo can attest to this, that the energy packs, the load shedding emergency energy packs for the lower LSM groups was going to be rolled out before winter. That's very ambitious, and I really would like to ask the Premier, how far along are we in A, procuring the emergency packs, and B, distributing the emergency packs? Member Dagmo, would you agree with me that they said they wanted to do it before winter? Member Dagmo? Okay. So that's what I would like to ask the Premier first and foremost, and then in addition to, of course, Member Kasim's questions. Then I would like to also find out from the various departments, and maybe this is something that we can arrange, and not necessarily call every department individually, but in a subsequent meeting, call the Premier and ask him how far the departments are in spending the money that they have been allocated through the various categories that is outlined in the OPRI on page 110. Okay, I'm just checking my meeting plan. I'm just checking the chat box. If you would give me just a minute. I seem to have covered everything in the chat box. So can we agree that the first person that we call, the first two people that we call, is the Premier in conjunction with Mr. Alvi Lester, that we call to this meeting as a start, and then the Minister of Electricity as well. Member van der Westhuizen?
Thank you, Chair. Fully agree. But can I just come back to my proposal that we perhaps give members an opportunity to submit in writing, let's say within the next 7 days, what we believe should be the mandate of this committee, so that you and the procedural officer perhaps can compile that, and that we at our next meeting formally agree to the mandate and what we are going to try and achieve through the work of this committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Member van der Westhuizen. What I will also do is ask the procedural officer as a terms of reference to exactly see what the the modus operandi was of the ad hoc committee dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. Member Nkondlo?
Thank you, Chair. I want to support Member Andrikas. In addition, Chair, I would like, if we could be allowed, that in the same spirit of adding questions to the Premier as part of preparing for his presentation to the ad hoc, if we could be allowed maybe until this Friday. I'm not sure when are you going to send those questions to him so that we can also send on email to yourself and the procedural officer so that you can also add our questions with which the Premier can also respond to when he comes to present to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Nkondlo. I'm mindful that it's a long weekend and some people might be going traveling over the long weekend. I propose that we ask that all our questions be submitted by the 13th of April, and then we ask the Premier to, if possible, to appear to come and address the committee in the week of either the 17th or the week of the 24th, because that's another long weekend, and I wouldn't want to go into May before we have the Premier appear before us. Thank you, Member Nkondlo. So if I can ask members and I can ask the procedural officer to send out a message today to say that by the 30th of April, if all the questions could be submitted, and then if the Premier if we can meet again in the week of the 17th or the week of the 24th, but definitely before the 27th, if that would be possible. Member Dagmo, I see your hand is okay. Member Dagmo, I see your hand is up, or is that a legacy hand, sir? I'll move to Member van der Westhuizen.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And in terms of the schedule of meetings, if we as a committee could ask that you and the procedural officer study the parliamentary program. If I recall correctly, the ad hoc committee on COVID met, obviously taking into account constituency periods, etc., fortnightly, so that you look for potential slots on the parliamentary program every 2 weeks for this committee to meet. That's my proposal.
Thank you, Member van der Westhuizen. We already have spoken about this, and we will come back to the committee when we meet again to propose to put forward the program. But yes, we have to take into consideration the constituency periods and of course by-elections. But the best day would be to work on a Wednesday for now. But we will come back to you, and we will come back to the committee, and we will propose the way going forward in terms of the regular occurrence of these meetings. Member Christians?
No, thank you, Chair. I want to concur and agree with Member van der Westhuizen, and that was my suggestion, that we allow you and the procedural officer to get dates. And being then giving us the week of the 17th or 24th, I think that is quite in order with all the dates. And then also, yeah, that we can maybe decide, because everybody is busy, that we look at meeting not every week, but every second week, as Member van der Westhuizen said. And then when we meet, that we have, a lengthy meeting, a 3-4 hour meeting, in order to do justice to this committee. So thank you, Chair. I'm totally in agreement. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Member Christians. Member Murray?
I just want members to be mindful that when we decide on what we think our mandate should encompass, we first look at what a state of disaster means. And in fact, what forces come into play, what powers, which we never had before, can we now access, and how can we exercise those powers and authority in terms of the declaration by the President of a state of disaster. It's not a state of emergency, it's a state of disaster, and we've just got to find our way within the ambit of that law and regulations. That's
Thank you, Member Marie. We will definitely take that into consideration. Members, are there any other Member van der Westhuizen?
Chair, Chair, I would also like to suggest that our default option for this committee would be to meet virtually. That's my proposal.
Thank you, Member van der Westhuizen. As I understand it, we haven't been allocated a budget, so I would say that the go-to platform would be MS Teams, and I think it would make it better for everybody if we met via MS Teams. But I will confirm that as we will mandate the regularity of these meetings. Member Marie, is that another hand or is that a legacy hand?
I apologize. It's a legacy hand, so I apologize.
Thank you, sir. Members, are there any other suggestions or recommendations that you would like to put forward? In that case, I will ask the senior, the procedural officer I will meet with the procedural officer. Sorry, Ms. Kluter, yes? Ma'am, you're on mute.
Good day, Chair.
You're on mute again?
Yeah, sorry, Chairperson. Now, I just forgot to note the apology of Member Derek America.
Oh, okay, good. All right, thank you so much. That is so noted. So what we will do is we will meet in the meantime. Ms. Kluter and I will meet to draft the committee program to send it to all the members of the committee, and then we will ask Ms. Kluter will ask in writing for all the questions that we would like to pose to the Premier, and any further recommendations within the next 7 days. So by the 13th of April, we will ask that the committee members submit their questions for the Premier, and then we will come back and see exactly when we will meet. Hopefully on the 19th of April, but we will see whether that's possible. Are there any further deliberations on this matter before we move on in the agenda? In that case, thank you very much for everybody attending for this part of the agenda. We will now move to committee business. So those people who are not part of the committee, you may be excused, and we'll give you a couple of minutes to excuse yourself from the meeting. Thank you.
I'm confused now. I hope I'm not part of this committee, but you can guide me here. If I'm part of the committee, I'll stay. If not, I will leave now.
You're free to stay, sir, as we will be deliberating on the minutes of the previous meeting. But let me just see quickly.
I'm newly appointed to this committee now.
So you're welcome to stay, sir.
Good day,
Okay.
Chairperson, through you.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Member Marie is a member of this committee.
Thank you, Ms. Kluti.
Oh, thank you.
All right, so let's go through the draft minutes for the meeting that we had on the 16th of March, page 1. It was. Ms. Kluti, can you keep sharing your screen, please? Page 1, if we scroll down. Page 2, if we scroll down. And at the bottom of page 2, that is my signature. Are there any, is there a proposal to accept the minutes? Member van der Westhuizen? Thank you. Would anybody like to second, even though we don't need one? No. In that case, the minutes are so adopted. Are there any resolutions or further actions that we need to take from this meeting, members?
Nothing flowing from the previous minutes, but obviously a lot of actions flowing from this meeting, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other inputs for resolutions or actions other than what we've already recorded?
I think that
Yes, Member Goodwin.
sorry, I think that we've got to find a way of letting the public know that what we are busy with. I don't know how we're going to do it. There's a lot of anxiety amongst the people out there. We meet and we have our meetings and we allow the public to even listen to our virtual meetings, but there's a lot of people out there might not be aware that we are very seriously tackling the issue of load shedding. And I just wondered whether members of the other parties agree that we should reach out to the public to inform them what we are busy with and what, once we've determined our mandate, that we make this known to the public in general and then invite the NGOs to a meeting of that nature to let them know that we are busy looking at solutions. We cannot light a candle and put it under a bucket. Let's let our light shine, sir. Just a suggestion.
Thank you, Member Marais. What we will do is we will work through the Stakeholder and Communication Services Department from the Parliament, and we will send out the notice of the meeting to anybody who wants to attend the meeting. I will also, as a side note, I will also monitor media coverage of this meeting so that we can gauge what media is interested in this meeting and how far they reach is, so we can assess the importance and the reach to our citizens as to the work of this committee. All right. Members, if there are no further comments, I would like to thank you for your attendance and your participation in this meeting. I think it was a very a robust meeting, and I want to thank you for that. And we, as previously stated, we will communicate with you within the next couple of days, and I look forward to your input before the 13th of April. Have a wonderful day. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Chair. Well done.